Now, I'm listening to this, and sounds sexist, especially the woman. But all three participants in this, and this is the national debating platform. And you have a renowned male expert on matters of race, right? Now, to me, it's unlistenable too. All of them fail in the fundamental matter. I mean, you have the woman who's going on about things like, now, I have a library from the age of 25 of sociology, evolutionary biology, evolutionary psychology, genetics, blah, blah, blah. Physics. Physics has moved, particularly the last 15, 20 years after string theory became sort of eponymous. Physics has moved into the realm of consciousness. Roger Penrose says he has no idea where it's from. Most sane physicists say exactly the same, / philosophers. Because a lot of philosophy is about what is the nature of reality. So you've got to kind of know a bit about physics. My point. This woman is there saying, now she'll have a degree from, I say, Woolly Polly, Wolverhampton Polly. She's there saying that the subconscious is different to the conscious. But she's adamant. It's like you've got something going on in the conscious and something going on in the subconscious. She's saying that to make her look clever. I don't even know how you can really talk about the subconscious and the conscious, and I've studied these things all my life, or what the reality is. I'm going to just go this to audio now, but I just want to just chuck in. You see, none of these people, they all want to sound worthy. None of these people use the only way of communicating which has ever worked, really, which is to tell your own stories, or stories of those close to you where you can fill in with emotive anecdote. So I'm going to try and tell a few stories. Now, if you're assuming like, oh, we've got white man, it's going to be a little bit kind of Nigel Farage-ish, please, you're going to hear in this something that is the perfect description of two things that are in the subconscious, that are as pro-brown people or black people as you can ever hear. I know nothing more pro-black people, brown people, than what I'm going to stick in. But the context is I'm going to explain a few stories. And I'm kind of qualified. I shall do the first one here. Okay. And then I have to go to audio. Now, there's like, in my 20s, I have spent, I worked all over the world, worked in really provincial places as well. That's important. Not in sophisticated centres like New York, Los Angeles, Buenos Aires. No, I always chose to work in the provinces, smallish, out-of-the-way places. Now, just so happens that whilst I was doing that, I also lived, my base was a little flat in a very humble part of West Ealing, where there were, I should imagine, it was about half ethnic or brown people, brown or black people. When I say brown, I mean brown or black. And you see, this endless, it's semi-nonsense. I mean, the majority race of the planet is brown, a mixture. I wish they'd just speak in such a way that they're encouraging people to think that way, for starters. But on one side, I had a very working class, retired, old English white family. The other side, a brown West Indian family, or they'd been originally the West Indies. The kids were all born in that house. Over the road was a rather fantastic black woman. I can't even remember what her details were. She was my friend. She'd been left endlessly by lovers. Anyway, living there. Now, I was brought up in an only white background. Only. There were no brown or black people in I lived the Vale of Clwyd, you could call it a 50-kilometre circle from the place called Ruthin. To me, my home patch ended at the Horseshoe Pass. That's where the Madlands started. Right. That's to the east. Okay. There was not one brown or black person. None. Zero. Okay. In my 20s, because we'd had good culture from the age of 16, I would mix with all my kids. We were all so ordinary, but we gravitated towards the great culture, punk, then what followed, blah, blah, blah. And yes, very much part of it was then the reggae, etc. And then, as is well documented, but never said enough, okay, so quickly, the Rock Against Racism movement took over and just got everywhere. And it's almost like you compulsorily had a badge R against R. That doesn't make the slightest bit of difference, though. Yes, it does make a some difference, but whether or not you can call this subconscious or conscious, I don't even know. It's a cultural construct, which is great. Nothing wrong with that. To me, all people in the same are equal, no matter who they are. Anyway, so living having my base in this part of London, I never even spoke to the white people next door because I would occasionally hear them over the fence, and they were really rather horrible. Well, now, relative to me, to my progressive fucking Corbynite existence, which it was actually, okay, as were all my friends, including all the girlfriends in Britain, okay, they were kind of old school bigots. The family on the right, I would speak to them in a friendly way. I kind of liked them all. I only had one hesitancy, which is because they're from the Caribbean originally. Almost everybody in the Caribbean is pretty religious, and you would hear they were wonderful. They were so meek, humble, but fun. The kids must have had. There's a couple. They must have been in their 40s, maybe even towards 50, and they had 3 or 4 kids, and 1 or 2 of the kids over the years. I kind of would have a very if I was out at the front repairing my car, one of them would spend time with me. Yeah, but I kind of just kept a slight. We weren't back and forth into each other's houses because I didn't want to be around the religious thing. Anyway, now I'm going to get to the West Indies now. Okay. When I was about 27, I got a job my job was actually on St. Kitts, which was a very poor island in the West Indies. But I worked for one of the most brutal, tough, and pretty wealthy West Indians in the whole of the West Indies. Very well-known man. I can't remember where he came from originally, but he owned a company called Carib Aviation, which was based in one of the real jewels. Okay, you have islands like St. Bart's, which are kind of the jet set jewels, but they're quite restricted. Now, Antigua had been really developed, very expensive elite tourism there. If you're the man who owns the private air charter company in Antigua, you are fucking lethal. And we had about 30 aircraft, maybe it was at least 20. He had an airline which did all the puddle jumping all around the Caribbean. Carib Aviation. Frank DeLille was actually a West Indian. You could see by his features, because there is a West Indian facial type. Now, this isn't part of what I'm going to say, by the way. And he was friends of the Prime Minister. In fact, he owned basically an island next to Antigua called Barbuda. He was friends of V.C. Baird, the Prime Minister. Frank DeLille was an albino. Now, that's got nothing to do with anything. I'm just putting that in as a whatever. Frank DeLille, and he must have been about 75. He could still fly. He'd been a jobbing pilot maybe 30, 40 years ago. He was famous throughout the whole of the Caribbean and South America too. Florida as well. Like this amazing, tough, brutal, swashbuckling, but so intelligent, money-making. He had an empire. Frank DeLille had a policy. I repeat, we had at least 20 aircraft, I would have said. Little one, Britain and Norman Islanders, the islanders take about 10 to 12 passengers, and a mixture. He had a policy, which is he basically, with a couple of exceptions, he only employed white, European, primarily, Americans, if he must, pilots. I would be flying one of his small aircraft. I was the pilot based on St. Kitts. There was only one aircraft and me. And some days you'd do 30 little puddle jump flights around the adjoining islands. And they had to go to clockwork. If you got late on one of them, the whole day is fucked. Dozens and dozens of people's schedules are fucked. Like if you've got a group you're picking up on. I mean, this is basically a scheduled airline, but you could phone up and book your own taxi as well. So you might have a group who are going to be at St. Croix, Croix, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But you're 10 o'clock in the morning. If you get late, then it cascades, dominoes throughout the day. And they'll end up 3 hours late. A lot of the airports didn't have lights. So if you didn't get in by dusk, which in the tropics is about 6 o'clock, they might be really screwed. And then through the jungle telegraph, or that's probably the wrong metaphor to use, through whatever, the word goes around, Delisle's fucking shit show I mean, there was another airline that was just more scheduled, that didn't do the little diversions, and they had twin otters, Liat, and they were known as leave island anytime. But Delisle, the most important thing to him was actually his reputation, because he got a lot of work he would meet passengers as they came off the scheduled airlines in the bigger airports further around. So what Delisle did not want was bad PR. People saying nasty things in the posh hotel bars. Oh my God, Carib Aviation stranded me somewhere for 24 hours. Frank Delisle, his rule was basically, with the exception of one Trinidadian, Keith Joseph, he basically didn't employ any black pilots. Right. Now, it's embarrassing to say that. Why? What does that mean? That means that he had assessed that in the field of operating aircraft in this modern world, which was not in those days an elitist or exclusive thing, and actually quite poor people generally worked in aviation. And it's the cultural construct. If you just sat with Frank, he would have explained it. I never did, but he would have explained that my people, they're not, bless their cotton socks, due to a cultural construct, they haven't got the 20 or 30 years of confidence behind them in this modern world to operate an aircraft. Now, you see, it's almost like I resent telling that story, but that's a fact. Now, it was from the late 80s, okay, but I'm now going to roll forward to two things, okay? So please bear with me. I'm going to have to do it in audio, but, these pipsqueaks, absolute pipsqueaks, who think that, they're talking about this thing called unconscious bias. I wish they'd talk about something positive. It's always, they did say, there's good forms of unconscious, or whatever bias. But I wish they'd put meat on it. I'm going to tell you about something which is real. I can still feel it in my body, which is as brown person positive as you can get. Okay, it would be second if I'd said to my only daughter right early on, I'm going to keep you in a cage and not allow any whitey near you, because I only want you to ever touch and then eventually breed with brown or black people. Now, other than that, what I'm going to tell you, which I wouldn't do, I wouldn't dream of, okay, other than that, I'm going to tell you a story which is as black positive as you can possibly get, and real, okay, in the audio.